Hi everyone, I'm Divya Swankar, Product Manager in Logic Apps, and today in this video, I want to show you how you can use Foundry models via API management from a Logic Apps business process. Many organizations use APIM as a way to centrally manage their APIs and token usage. And so, with this new capability, agentic workflows in Logic Apps can also use models via APIM. This demo has three main steps. The first step is to deploy the reasoning model of your choice in Microsoft Foundry. The second step is to import the Foundry AI endpoints as APIs in API management. And the final step is to use these reasoning models from Logic Apps, and those calls would go to Foundry via APIM. So let's go ahead and jump into the demos now. So here we are in Microsoft Foundry, and I've already created a Microsoft Foundry resource and a project in it. So here we are in the context of that Foundry project. Now, as a next step, we want to deploy models into our project. If you're starting from scratch, you probably do not have any models deployed. And in order to do that, you go into Discover or Build. So let's go into Discover. And here we see the option to browse all the models. So depending on what your needs are, you can deploy one or more models from here. And to do that, you simply select the model of your choice. For example, let's pick this one, and then you see the option to deploy. So you can either choose to deploy using the default settings, or you can go into the custom settings and then give a different deployment name or change other configurations. Since I already have the models deployed, I'm going to skip this step and we'll go into the build tab here, and you can see all the models that I have deployed here. And as you can see, this includes some of the first party models like GPT 4.1, 5.1, and more. And then it also includes third party models like DeepSeek, Mistral, Anthropic models. Now, the idea is that using this approach, you would be able to use any of the models you have in Foundry from Logic Apps via API management. However, today in the demo, I will be using GPT models only, as we are fixing some issues that are preventing to use the third-party models, like specifically Anthropic models. But we should be able to enable that very soon. So this completes the first step, which was to deploy the AI models into your Foundry project. Here is my APIM instance. So let's go ahead and create a new API. And here I choose Foundry and then go ahead with all the defaults. So as a first step, selecting the subscription and the Foundry project where I have deployed the models. Next, we provide the display name and name as well as the base path. This can be any string that you want to use. We choose the default options. Now you can manage token consumption via AI gateway, and that's what this option is. So you can choose to manage token consumption and go with the default limits, or you can make changes to it. Another feature that is offered out of box is semantic caching and AI content safety. Again, I'm not setting these up, but you have the option to configure and set these up for your models. So finally, we are ready to create the API. And here you see all the configuration we chose, and then we go ahead and select create. So here the API is created successfully, and you can see all the operations that were created as part of this process. Now we want to use the chat completion API here. And so let's go ahead and look at the settings here. You can see the display name that we provided as part of the configuration steps. And now let's go ahead and just give this API a try. So here I'm providing the name of the deployment model, and then we'll just go ahead and click on send, which would send this request. The response indicates that the request was completed successfully, and the model that we provided was used as the reasoning model. So before we jump to the next step, something to note is the base URL, which we'll need when we create the connection to this APIM. So here is the base URL that you would want to copy for later steps. Okay, so here I have Logic App Standard, and I have pre-created a workflow here. So Let's go ahead and open this workflow. And so here I'm using a request trigger to receive a request, and then I have a response action at the end to send back the response. So I'll go ahead and add an agent step here. And now for this agent, let me give it a name. So I'm calling it a sentiment analysis agent. And here we are going to look at the connection. So let's go ahead and create a connection from scratch here. So I'll add a new connection. This will be connecting to Foundry model. So I'll call it Foundry model connection. And here are all the choices I have to bring in the models. So in this case, I'm going to select APIM Gen AI Gateway. All right, so I've filled in the subscription and APIM service and API details. And now we need to fill in the API endpoint, which we had copied previously, and then the API key. All right, so now I've provided the API endpoint and API key as well, and I'll go ahead and create the connection. So now the agent is connected to the APIM endpoint, and at this point, we can provide the model that we want to use. So I'll go ahead and try GPT 5.1 here and use that as a custom value. And then let's give the instructions for the agent. All right, so we have an agent that performs sentiment analysis on the given content. And to begin with, here is the content that we are getting through the request trigger. So we are simply providing the body of the request trigger. So in this case, we are basically building an autonomous agent that can respond to requests coming in. And then these requests can come in from your external website, from email, from anywhere, right? So while I have used a request trigger, you could use any trigger here: forms trigger, email trigger, or any other endpoint that is responding to requests from your website. All right, so I think I have got everything. So I'll go ahead and publish this. Let's run this workflow with a sample input. So here I'm going to run with payload. And as a payload, I'm just providing a message about a coffee machine and that I like it most of the times. So here we select run with payload. And this basically triggers off a run with the payload that we have provided. Now here we are automatically brought into the run history. So run history gives you full traceability into the execution of the workflow that we just created. Go into the agent node itself, and here you can see the deployment ID, the model that was being used, which was the model that we provided in the input request, and that this is going through the APIM Gen AI gateway analysis of the and then finally we can see the response based on the analysis done by the large language model. All right, so this brings us to the end of the demo. Just a quick recap: what I covered in this demo is that you can have your models deployed and hosted in Foundry and then use them via APIM Gen AI Gateway from Logic Apps. And this gives you an ability to use any model from the Foundry